On this episode of Montclair News Lab, rumors travel fast. How camera equipment caused a panic on Montclair State's campus.
I didn't say goodbye.
Then, the land beneath us, how Montclair State is trying to recognize its past.
Of acknowledging this history, celebrating it, and building it into the institution.
Later, we investigate where students, staff, and faculty get the best cup of joe to kick off the morning.
Not good coffee at all.
Your school, your news, all this and more on Montclair News Lab. Hello and welcome to Montclair News Lab. I'm Louis Biantalillo.
And I'm Keyshawn Reese.
Well, let's get into it. Rumors in the age of social media can spread faster than it takes to debunk them. That's exactly what happened on Montclair State University's campus on Sunday, November 21st, when students believed an active shooter was on campus. At around 9:15 p.m., Ryan Breda, the president of the Phi Delta Theta fraternity, was holding his organization's weekly chapter meeting in University Hall when a brother heard the rumor from a sorority who was also in the building.
It was a game of telephone, so someone told one person, another person told another.
Breda had his fraternity locked down in the lecture hall to keep everyone safe. He tried to keep the group calm, but admits, without knowing anything from the university, he was afraid for his life.
I kept thinking to myself, oh my God, I didn't say goodbye.
Just upstairs, there was a ball with over 100 students, and university police were there because of the large group. UPD was called by a concerned student that there could be a gun on campus. The officers advised the student leaders of the event to keep everyone in the room with strict instructions not to tell them why. Giovanna Boggins was one of the leaders running the event.
I began getting text messages in my group chats, calls, people saying, "What's happening? Are you guys okay?"
At the exact same time that these rumors were gaining steam on social media, the university was rushing to find out the truth. UPD was investigating a call to the emergency hotline that someone was seen with a rifle near the Feliciano School of Business. Administration was busy with the task of informing students with updates, and they soon put out their first message. University police are investigating a report of suspicious persons on campus. There is no current emergency on campus. But this didn't stop the frenzy of rumors.
Because you have a university police officer saying, everything's fine, go back to your normal activities, but then there's a police officer walking in University Hall with a rifle.
In a news conference last week with student media, Montclair News Lab asked University President Jonathan Coppell about the incident and the spread of false information.
I don't want to be in the business of trying to keep up with the latest rumor, because then we're just in this spiral to the bottom.
While university leadership was trying to communicate details in real time, the digital rumor mill couldn't be kept up with. Students were sending screenshots of text messages from others in group chats and online.
But of course, the reason why rumors spread so quickly is that they're not based in fact.
Then another official text was sent to students saying, "There is no campus emergency. Police investigation found alleged suspicious individuals left campus 2 hours ago." The next morning, a more detailed explanation was sent to the university community saying, further investigation by the UPD found that a student had come to campus to return audiovisual and tripod equipment to a room in the Feliciano School of Business. Door access codes confirmed this activity. So the lesson here is, as harmful as these rumors might be, some good did come out of this one. The university is looking for ways to make campus more safe for students. For example, residence halls. While some of them used to be unlocked during the daytime hours, they will now all be locked 24/7 to keep the students safe.
Since you're one of the 4 members at the student press meeting with Dr. Coppell and Vice President Soflaris, what other news did they make?
Well, Keyshawn, I think the biggest thing that we heard in that roundtable discussion was all about graduation. We might, for the first time in 2 years, get that big graduation in the arena, and we might get more than 2 tickets ever since COVID. They only had 2 tickets per person. It's just really exciting news, and we're going to get all of the information right before spring semester starts, so over winter break.
When COVID-19 first hit, most international students had to return to their home countries. This was only the beginning of a long struggle, as we learn in a package produced by Suk-Young Cho, narrated by Bernie Stegwa.
After coming to Montclair State University, international students Paula Godoy and Duk-Young Park had their plans disrupted by COVID-19. Paula Godoy, a student from Colombia, was sent back to her home country. She just had arrived for the spring semester of 2020.
Because I was sad, because I worked so hard for being here in Montclair and studying overseas. So I was sad, but at the same time, I missed my family.
South Korean student Duk-young Park returned to Korea. Before he left, he had to throw out everything he couldn't bring with him.
It was a waste of money, but the safety was paramount at the time for me.
Moving back across the world was difficult for him. The 13-hour time difference made online classes exhausting.
So whenever my class finished, the sun was rising.
During that summer, it was announced that in-person classes would be back in the fall. Vaccinations and masks were required, but it wasn't easy for some international students to get vaccinated at home.
For the vaccination process is really different. It's not as easy to get a vaccine because we have limited amount.
Duk-young and Paula were able to get vaccinations at home, but it wasn't easy.
Luckily, I got vaccinated with the expense of delaying the flight.
Others weren't so lucky.
Most of my friends couldn't make it to here. They couldn't get vaccinated by the deadline.
Both students say Montclair State's vaccine mandate did not take international students into account.
MSU should have been more considerate for international students' situation.
Sometimes I feel they don't realize that they have international students.
There are less international students on campus this semester, but university officials are hoping the students come back. Because vaccines are becoming more widely available to larger segments of the population, we expect our international enrollment to be much higher in fall 2022, surpassing our successful fall 2021 enrollments. For international students, the journey to get here was the easiest part of the trip, but the university says it's committed to its international students. From Montclair News Lab, I'm Bernice Dagwa.
If you're watching this on campus, there's a good chance you're standing on native land. That's right, Montclair State University is on a journey to acknowledge the original inhabitants of the land it calls home. Issa Winek reports.
The Decolonize MSU event is part of the journey that Montclair State University is on to acknowledge that it sits on the traditional territory of the Lenni Lenape people. Tribal Chief Vincent Mann spoke at this occasion, informing students how Native American culture is still present in America.
It's time for us to understand that Native America is still here, right? From one end of this continent to the other end of this continent, in every single direction that there is.
Another key figure speaking at the event was Montclair State University President Jonathan Coppell. He acknowledged that colonization was very damaging to the Native Americans.
The genocide of Indigenous Americans that is inextricably a foundational element of this country.
President Coppell says our education should go beyond simply acknowledging the crimes against the Native people.
And the richness of the cultural heritage, the political philosophy, the approaches to well-being, to agriculture, to social organization. There's an incredible wealth of good stuff that should be celebrated and embraced beyond acknowledging the history of colonization and dispossession.
Lisa Brooks is a professor at Montclair State who is also a citizen of the Choctaw Nation based in Oklahoma. She addressed the lack of Native American history in modern-day education.
Education systems, whether they're in K-12 or higher education, really don't have a strong sense of American history from a Native perspective.
Lenni Lenape Tribe Representative Reverend John Norwood agrees that MSU should aim to educate students on Native American stories and allow them to interact with these tribes in present day.
I absolutely agree with Chief Mann that they need to understand that they're engaging the actual people, that it's not merely looking into the past, but understanding that those people continue into the present.
Lastly, President Coppell stated Montclair State's ambition to educating its students about Native American culture.
Let's make Montclair State University the leading institution that's taking up the banner of acknowledging this history, celebrating it, and building it into the institution.
A team of leaders and educators ready to give Native American history the attention it deserves. For Montclair News Lab, I am Issa Winek.
Most college students can't go by a single day without their good old cup of coffee, and I'm sure many of you at home strongly agree. Well, have you ever wondered what's the best place on campus to grab a cup of joe? Haley Majewski has that answer for you.
Coffee. Almost everybody drinks it. But as college students, we thrive off of it. Coming back to campus from COVID, there are more students than ever waiting in line jittering with caffeine withdrawal. We enlisted coffee roaster and enthusiast Michael Stevens to see which cup of coffee at Montclair State is really worth waiting in line for. Stevens worked as a Starbucks barista for 3 years before becoming a professional coffee roaster and employee at Roasted Coffee in Hasbrook Heights.
The tasting notes inside of a coffee is everything to me. I personally like the lighter stuff, more floral, like lavender and citrus and stuff like that I look for, but a dark roast really does do a lot for me in the morning when I need to wake up.
Stevens ranked coffee from 2 Dunkins, one in the Student Center and one at Blanton Hall. He also ranked from Panera and the nearby off-campus McDonald's. From each location, we ordered a small hot black coffee and disguised it by putting it in a paper cup without any logos or identifications. Full disclosure, in order to get the coffees to Stevens, we had to travel from MSU to Hasbrook Heights. However, Stevens assured us that the vital notes of the coffee would ring out despite the travel time. Now on to the tastings. Coffee number 1.
Very bland, not a lot of taste to it. Very generic coffee.
Coffee number 2.
Smells better than coffee number 1. A little darker than coffee number 1, has more flavor. Get actually notes of chocolate with it. Number 2 is better than number 1.
Coffee number 3.
Smells better than 1 and 2. Definitely a medium roast. Has good flavor, but still lacking everything you want in a good cup of coffee. But so far the best of the 3.
Coffee number 4.
Has no smell to it. Not good coffee at all. It's very generic, nothing to it. Tastes watered down. Yeah, pretty bad coffee.
And now for the rankings. Coming in 4th place is McDonald's.
Not good coffee at all.
In 3rd place is Dunkin' in the Student Center.
Very bland.
The runner-up is Panera.
Has more flavor. Get actually notes of chocolate with it.
And, according to this barista, the best place on campus to get coffee is Dunkin' at Blanton Hall.
Has good flavor.
They say America runs on Dunkin', and I guess you could say so does MSU. For Montclair News Lab, I'm Haley Majewski.
That's all for this week's episode of Montclair News Lab. I'm Keyshawn Reese.
And I'm Louis Biontalillo. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope to see you again next week, but first, we'll leave you off with a behind-the-scenes look at Focus Disruption, the kickoff.
Focus Disruption will continue in the spring of 2022, where we will look at all things affected by the pandemic, including climate change, workforce, education, mental health, and misinformation. Stay tuned for more collaborative efforts between all the student media organizations at the School of Communication and Media, including the Montclairian, Red Hawk Sports Network, WMSC, and Montclair News Lab.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Montclair News Lab, on TikTok at montclair.newslab, and check out our website at montclairnewslab.tv for more.